Said I got time for one more. So, check this out. I stare at the blank page with sharpened pencil. A canvas of creation so full of potential, and I say aloud, I want to write poetry. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, but hear me out. I want to write poetry, but not just any poetry. I want to write poetry that blatantly defies everything you learned about poetry in high school English class. Poetry that lashes out at limericks, wreaks havoc on haiku, stares down stanzas, and suplexes sonnets, leaving the couplets cowering in the corner. Do you smell what this poetry's cooking? I hope you're paying attention, because this poetry's been known to lay the smack down like Dwayne Johnson, which is only appropriate because I am from the Rock. Poetry not meant to be confined to the limits of the page. I'm talking margin-defying poetry that refuses to fall in line in an orderly left-to-right fashion. Poetry not meant to be read but heard. Heard like bass beating furiously down a block as if gorillas are locked in the trunk. More fit for breakbeats and mixtapes than inspirational books and poetry anthologies. More Kanye than Coleridge. More Wu-Tang than Wordsworth. Poetry meant to be seen, like paint plastered in protest on inner city walls. This ain't no Hallmark card poetry. This is for the taggers, frustrated with dilapidated buildings and decaying infrastructure. But this poetry doesn't sit around and wait for change. This is that outcast, get up, get out, and get something poetry, that Bob Marley, get up, stand up poetry. So you can try to keep this poetry in the dark, but it's going to bring color to the world regardless. Refusing to stay inside the lines, paying homage to the broad spectrum of earth tones that make up the red, white, and blue. Ever rebellious towards the often anglicized American literary canon, I want to write poetry as diverse as we are. Poetry that redefines our ethnic identity to include all the crucial components too often left out. Poetry that can overcome oppression in any form, be it smallpox blankets, internment camps, fire hoses, crack cocaine, unequal wages, the inner city, Quran burnings, English-only mandates, apartheid-style passport policies, and biblical claims against biological attraction, to stand strong on level ground and say, this is our house too. Let's build it together. I want to write poetry. I want to write poetry you can smell. Intoxicating like incense, potent like pheromones, potent like perfume, overflowing with pheromones. With a scent that lingers the way hers does in the sheets. Poetry I can bury my face in and inhale. Letting it fill my chest, letting it burn inside my lungs like a shot of Patron, igniting my breath so when I recite it, it comes out in bursts of fire and sparks thought like a rusted out exhaust pipe dragging on the asphalt. I want to write poetry you can feel. I'm talking reach out and touch, but not with your fingers. This poetry goes deeper than the surface, reaching deep down inside of you, embracing you, letting you know it's okay because you're not alone. I want to write poetry that's great. No, I want to write poetry that's super. Poetry that's faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, that can leap tall buildings in a single bound. You'll never catch this poetry and Clark Kent in the same place at the same time. I want to write poetry that's incredible. Poetry that behaves like one time it got hit with gamma radiation, so now it's got a real bad anger management issue and you just said something about his mama. I want to write poetry that's amazing. Poetry I can fling from my wrists and use to swing from skyscrapers. But this poetry won't need a secret identity. I'm talking Tony Stark's Iron Man poetry. Poetry that'll save the world, call a press conference, look straight at the camera and say, I am poetry. I want to write poetry you can taste. I want to knead the letters like dough. I want to dice the syllables like tomatoes. Let the words saute in the skillet with garlic, oregano, and chopped basil. I want to shred the lines like fresh mozzarella, top the bars with spicy pepperoni and Italian sausage. I want to write poetry so substantial, you'll need to wear a bib to listen to it. I'm talking Chicago-style deep dish poetry with enough nutritional value to feed Somalia, and you'll still need a to-go box. I want to write poetry for people who don't even like poetry. And that's cool, because this poetry doesn't know it's poetry. This poetry thinks it's a b-boy, so it's more acquainted with six-step than simile, more acquainted with air flares than alliteration. I want to write poetry I can wield as a weapon. Poetry that can protect me like a shield, because they're talking concealed carry, and I'm looking at the murder rate in Rockford, Illinois, and thinking the last thing we need are more guns.
Hell yeah.
I want to write poetry for a deeper purpose than making you think I'm deeper than I really am. So my poetry doesn't need finger snaps or a round of applause. And y'all seem like pretty cool people, so I'm going to be honest. I want to write poetry because women like poetry. Poetry that deep down is a theater nerd. And then I'll send it to high school hallways everywhere so it can show all the other theater nerds how to walk with the swagger of the varsity football team. Poetry my buddy can bring with him on cross-country hauls so he can leave a part of himself home with his girl and his kid. Poetry for my sister. Poetry that lets her know that she's more valuable than any boy's impression of her. Poetry for a friend lost. Poetry that lets him know that whenever he decides to come home, it's all love. And I'm not sure what happened, but if it's anything I did, I apologize. I want to write poetry. I want to write poetry for you. Yes, you, because maybe no one's ever written you a poem before. Poetry that heals whatever battle scars life may have left you with. Poetry that reaches deep down inside itself to give you everything it's got. And when it doesn't have anything left, it returns to the page exhausted. To teach you its final lesson. To remind you that after all, it's just poetry. And these are just words made from arbitrary symbols. The pencil has no power if you don't pick it up, and any greatness displayed was inside of you already. That's the kind of poetry I want to write. And the page stared back at me blankly as if to say, you better get to work. Thank you.
What's up?
I just want to say that was brilliant. Excuse me. There's an old expression, being able to say what others can only think. You have that gift. Maybe you're apolitical, but has nothing to do with the current situation. But why don't you consider writing speeches for orators? I mean, you can move people with that kind of thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Saying what others can only hear.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, you can write any of my speeches when I work for Alderman. That's cool.
Can you write me poetry? You can write a poem anytime.
Yeah, I think all the ladies are very happy with you right at this moment. All right, so as you can see, there's a reason why Justin is one of our features and why I consider him one of the best poets in Rockford, if not the best poet in Rockford. I'm going to go with the best for me. Sorry to everyone else here. But he was our most requested poet from the other poets on the certified page, so we wanted to make sure that we brought him to you at Bookworm before we were on. So, if you didn't know that, you were requested more than any other poet in the world. So there's something we do here at Bookworm, and most of you know what it is, but for those of you that don't, you'll know that we have a very beloved giraffe on our wall. That's Juliet, also known as the erotic giraffe. And Romeo, her love, is up on top of the Coke cooler, and they never get together, but there's a whole story that's been written around them between our poets and our comedians and everything else. So we've created for our features a very special award, and that's our Hey Award. And only people that have featured at the Bookworm have one. So you have the very last Hey Award. If anyone has questions for Justin, we're going to start round 2, and then when we take our quick break between round 2 and round 3, you're welcome to talk to him. Did you bring anything to sell or hype today?
No.
Okay, he didn't bring...
Library tomorrow, 2 to 4, Main Branch Library.
Yeah.
And make sure you hit those up, because they put a lot of work into their programs, and they really do a lot of really great stuff for the community, and they deserve all of the support and help we can give them.
Round of applause.